Birkin House, a noir novella by Grace Vandenberg. Chapter 1, The House That Waited. The Brittany coast held its breath the night Vincent Marge chose to become a thief. The wind had dropped to a whisper, the tide was low, and the moon hung over the water like a pale coin waiting to be pocketed. Vincent stood at the edge of the cliff path, staring down at Birkin House, the former residence of Jane Birkin, though that meant little to him. He wasn't here for glamour. He was here for silver. He told himself this was sensible. A quiet house, a wealthy past, a perfect first job. But Birkin House had the stillness of a place that had been listening for too long. Vincent slipped through the garden gate, heart thudding, breath shallow. The shutters were closed, the windows dark. He moved through the rooms with the reverence of a man who feared waking ghosts. He found the locked door by accident, a narrow corridor, a key left in the lock, a silence that felt staged. He turned the key. The door opened. Inside were 5 bodies, arranged, composed, as if waiting for an audience. Vincent stumbled back, his throat tightening. He had come for spoons, not a shrine. Then he heard footsteps on the gravel outside. Someone else was here. Chapter 2, Capitain Boudaoud arrives. Capitain de Police Nesrine Boudaoud arrived before dawn, her coat damp with sea mist, her expression carved from quiet intelligence. She moved through Birkin House with the calm of a woman who had seen too much and forgotten none of it. Vincent sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug he hadn't asked for. Nesrine studied him the way a jeweler inspects a flawed stone. "You're not a killer," she said, "just a fool." He nodded, grateful for the distinction. Nesrine walked the corridor alone. She opened the door to the bodies and let the silence settle around her. 5 victims, 5 stories, 5 reasons. But the room felt incomplete. She touched the sideboard. 6 wine glasses, 6 chairs pulled back from the table, 6 sets of footprints in the dust. One guest was missing, and that guest was alive. Chapter 3, The Yachtsman. The storm rolled in by mid-morning, pushing a lone yacht toward the harbor. Arthur Janvier guided it in with the ease of a man who trusted the sea more than people. He found Nesrine on the pier, staring out at the churning water. "You look like someone who needs a witness," he said. "I need someone who understands tides." Arthur smiled. "Bodies or boats?" "Both." He followed her back to Birkin House, boots leaving wet prints on the polished floors. He studied the cove behind the house, the marks on the rocks, the faint scrape of a hull dragged ashore. "Someone arrived by sea," he said, "and someone left the same way." Nesrine nodded. She had known that, but it was good to hear it spoken aloud. Chapter 4, The House Remembers. Birkin House had been many things: a sanctuary for artists, a retreat for lovers, a stage for secrets. Nesrine walked its rooms with a detective's eye and a woman's intuition. The victims were identified one by one, names that meant little to the world, but everything to each other. A circle of friends fractured by something sharp and unseen. Arthur traced the tides, the weather patterns, the boat routes. Vincent, still trembling, insisted he had never seen any of them before. Nesrine believed him, mostly, but the house whispered otherwise. Chapter 5, The Sixth Guest. Late one night, Nesrine returned to the locked room alone. She stood among the bodies, listening to the house breathe. 5 victims, 6 glasses. She knelt beside the table, running her fingers along the wood. A faint indentation, recent, deliberate. Someone had pressed their ring into the surface. A sign, a message, a signature. She knew then that the missing guest had not fled in panic. They had left with purpose, and they would return. Chapter 6, Vincent Runs. Vincent escaped custody at dawn, driven by fear rather than guilt. He fled along the cliffs, convinced the killer was coming for him. Nesrine found his empty cell inside. Amateurs always ran toward danger, never away from it. Arthur joined her on the cliff path, scanning the horizon. The storm was returning. The tide was rising. Someone's coming back, he said. Someone never left, she replied. Chapter 7. The Return. Lightning split the sky as Nesrine and Arthur reached the rocks. A figure moved along the cliff edge, calm, deliberate, as though walking a familiar path. Vincent crouched behind a boulder, shaking. The figure turned. Nesrine stepped forward, voice steady. You should have stayed gone. The truth unfurled in the stormlight, motives rooted in jealousy, inheritance, and a pact made decades earlier in the shadow of fame. The sixth guest had orchestrated everything, gathering old friends for one final reckoning. The bodies were not victims. They were accomplices, and the last accomplice had returned to finish the ritual. Arthur moved first, swift and sure, cutting off the escape route. Nesrine closed in, her coat whipping in the wind. The killer lunged. The cliff crumbled. The storm roared. But Nesrine held her ground, and the sixth guest fell. Chapter 8. After the tide. By dawn, the storm had passed. The bodies were removed. The truth was recorded. The sea was calm again. Arthur prepared to sail on, though Nesrine suspected he would return. Vincent, shaken but alive, vowed never to steal anything again, not even a glance. Birkin House stood quiet, its shutters closed, its secrets aired at last. But the Brittany coast knew better. Houses like that never forget. They simply wait for the next tide.